Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Akalon here, and of course, welcome back to each and every one of you. This is a sad video. It's a very sad video because it is with great sadness that I have to tell all of the haters and everyone else that the good news for the war within is just continuing. At this point, I am disgusted that I can't seem to find anything to get angry about. I every time, like every week, there's a new announcement for something in the war within that just blows me away and makes me super happy and makes me super excited. You know, I've tried hard to find content, to find any announcement from the war within that I can make a little negative video about, you know, to get those negative clicks for the YouTube algorithm. Instead, Blizzard just keeps throwing good news my way. It's disgusting. I think Blizzard should do better. I think Blizzard should think of the content creators. You know, we need negative shit in order to really pump those numbers. And those negative things are not happening. I don't know what to tell you guys. It's another great day to be a World of Warcraft player because the war within is literally like the gift that just keeps on giving. Now, I'm not in this video going to talk about the actual implementation of that because I don't know what the implementation is going to be like. And of course, this is a brand new thing that Blizzard is going to try to do. And we don't know yet how that is going to play out. We have no idea, right? And I think Blizzard is also going to have maybe some baby steps, you know, maybe some fumbles at the beginning. But that's to be expected. If you have a brand new thing that you're trying, you're going to stumble. And Blizzard have shown in Dragonflight and in the War Within that they're willing to stumble and they're willing to learn from those mistakes. And then they're usually very quick these days at actually responding and fixing those mistakes, you know, when and if they occur. It's a game. The fact of the matter is that every single time you try something new, there's going to be things that you're not entirely sure how that can play out, how that can be abused by the player base. And believe me, players are really good at finding exploits and abusing them. Just take the frog incident on Mop Remix. These things happen. And how Blizzard responds is usually very important. And they do seem to be, you know, taking a response route and being very quick about it. Today's video, though, is about a feature that is coming in the War Within that I personally have been begging Blizzard for a very long time. And that is a brand new story mode that is coming to raids. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. When we go back to before looking for raid was a thing, this has always been something that people who prefer to play a little bit more solo, people that don't really have the time to play as hardcore and don't necessarily want to push themselves to the absolute max, have wanted. Then LFR was announced as this way for players to actually be able to experience the story of raids, except that's not how LFR played out. In LFR, if you wanted to pay attention to the voice lines of the boss, or if you wanted to pay attention to the aesthetics of the raid, well, good luck. The group is literally just slamming through. Half of the raid are people that completely overgear the raid and act like complete nonsense towards everyone else, and then just continuously abuses everyone that isn't as high as them, even though they're rocking around in mythic gear because they're doing LFR to see how big their EP is, rather than actually just, you know, going to do content that is equivalent to their skill level or at least their gear level. So it's never actually panned out the way that it was supposed to be. LFR was a way for all of the player base, because remember back in the day, before LFR was announced, or when LFR was announced, Blizzard revealed to us that less than 5% of the WoW player base actually raids and sees the end game of raiding. Because raiding has always had a bit of a intro problem. You have to have a lot of time, and not just to raid, but also to get ready to raid. Then once you are in a raiding guild, you have to either hope that your raiding guild is good enough to clear all of these bosses, or you have to do a bunch of jumping steps or little stepping stones in order to get to a guild that can do a level of difficulty that, you know, is equivalent to your skill level. It's a whole mess. And there are some people who love that, and I love that for them. I want that for you. I used to be a mythic raider. I know how much fun that can be. But as someone who nowadays play World of Warcraft primarily for the story, I hate LFR. I'm not going to lie to you. I think LFR is a big waste of space. It's fine to get some gear in, but I hate the system. I hate raiding in LFR because there's no real conversation of mechanics and who does what mechanics. So the whole thing that makes raiding super fun, being in there with a group and strategizing around how to take down a boss, that doesn't exist in LFR. Instead, everyone is just sort of expected to know what the boss does and is expected to have watched the video, and then you just have people doing random crap and hopefully the boss dies. So it really loses the whole playing chess and figuring out what bosses do. LFR is just not that. Instead, it is its own thing. So in the War Within, we're now getting another difficulty added. So it will still have LFR, you'll still have normal, you'll still have heroic, and you'll still have mythic. But now you'll have a new story mode that is added. And this is specifically for the Narubar Palace, or Narubar Palace, however you pronounce that, right? The story difficulty will allow for 1 to 5 players, which is perfect, because if you have a couple of friends and you just want to go fool around in there and figure stuff out, why not? No other raid or dungeon has a story mode at the moment, of course we know that. And we don't know yet what the gear, if any, is going to be from the story mode. Personally, I think it should be mostly just cosmetic stuff from the story mode, because fundamentally that is what it's about. It's about the story mode. And the last thing I want is more gear inflation. So if this starts providing even more gear for players, that could be a big problem. And there are ways of this scaling. And what I love about this is this could potentially open the door for Blizzard to add even more story into the raid. So rather than a raid just being a full-blown slog, bam, to the end, you have a lot more throughput and a lot more story added into it, and people on normal, heroic, and mythic can just skip that stuff. They don't have to play through the story. This is only for 1 to 5 players. And it basically feels like this is just going to be a very large scenario. Maybe a scenario that takes you a good hour, 2 hours to do, and you can enter into it as you want, because I'm assuming it will share raid lockouts with everything else. So if you've killed 2 bosses, you can go home, or you can go to work, come back tonight and kill another boss, and then go, farm some stuff, and then come back in. So you can do it at your own pace. You can bang it out on a Saturday if that's the day that you have time for it. Personally, I think this is perfect. I can even envision this becoming a sort of delve endeavor. So very much catering towards the solo player. Remember, this is something that Holly herself admitted. They have, first and foremost, a giant group of players that log in at the beginning of a new patch, play the story, and they never log in again. And this is thanks to their new collection of data. They now know that there's a lot of people who play exactly this way. So to all of those that used to say, story doesn't matter, no one cares about story, that's not true, folks. Everyone cares about, or a lot of people care about story. The problem in World of Warcraft, of course, is that a lot of the story is hidden behind doing harder content that most people maybe don't want to do. Then also there's a ton of solo players in World of Warcraft for whom delves have now been created. But I can imagine something like the story mode becoming something like that. So imagine you have story mode 1, and that is just the bog standard, see the story, have fun in it, just as a solo experience. But then maybe you can add some scaling later on. And you might think to yourself, but Ackle, wait, if you're going to add scaling, why not just go into normal, heroic, and mythic? Well, because some people like that solo experience. So if you make that raid be scalable, you give solo players something to do, because this now becomes their new sort of Torghast, or their new sort of Mage Tower, where, last week I did a +3, it was close. I've done a little bit more gearing now. I've got a little bit more things from delves. Now I'm diving back into it, and I'm going to try and push for that +4. This is much harder. It's much more of a challenge, but I'm doing it because I'm having fun in it. I can also see this being incorporated into warbands, which I think would also be very, very cool. Imagine if you could start taking your alts. So it's a 1 to 5, right? So imagine if you could take 4 of your alts being in there with you as the NPCs. Because remember, NPC dungeons or follower dungeons is now a thing. I can very easily see follower raids become a thing and have your actual alts be those followers, meaning you gear your alts to make them better for your follower raids, and that means that the follower raid is easier because your alts are better geared. And if Blizzard really wanted to start incorporating some mad crap, they could really go look at Dragon's Dogma. So I'm assuming that a lot of you don't know what Dragon's Dogma is, or if you do know the name, you probably have never played it. So in Dragon's Dogma, you have this pawn system. Pawns are NPCs. They're made by the player. Every player in the game can make one pawn, but then other players can actually hire or get your pawn. So you can have 2 pawns active at any given point, or 3 pawns, I think, active at any given time. And one is your own pawn that you created that levels with you, and the 2 others are from other players in the world. But here's the really cool thing. Let's say you fought a specific boss or a specific mob, and you had a very unique strategy along with how you fought the boss, a strategy that no one have figured out yet. The 2 pawns that are from other players and your pawn learn that strategy. So now, if another player picked up your pawn would actually do that strategy against that boss. And if that other player were to pay attention to what your pawn is doing, he may be able to figure out that strategy. Because the pawns learn as they go. Like the super AI of these pawns, they learn as they go, and they share that knowledge with whoever plays with them at the time. So Blizzard could easily do something like this. So the more you play on your alts, the better your alts get at following tactics. So let's say, for example, you have a tank alt, and you do dungeons on your tank alt, and you taunt mobs off of healers, and you taunt mobs off of DPS. That pawn, effectively, your alt, remembers that that is their job, to taunt things off and to position things in a specific way, maybe position things away from damage dealers. This is stuff that you teach your alt, so it becomes sort of like a game within the game. I'm just sort of daydreaming here. I don't think WoW really needs that level of complexity in the alt system. I just think that it's a really cool system, and it's a system that provides a lot of room for growth. I would love to hear your thoughts, though, on do you think that this should first and foremost be a scaling option eventually, where people can just solo challenge themselves in harder and harder raids? Or do you think it's actually that will take away from how raiding functions, and it will sort of destroy the sanctity of raids, and therefore it's fine if it's just a story mode, but it shouldn't be anything extra? And then what do you think about the warband system? Do you think that's good, bad? Let me know in the comment section down below. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, if you liked, if you dislike, dislike. $1 a month gets you access to nothing over on the Patreon, but it does help keep this channel free from sponsorships that want to sell you stuff that you do not need. And of course, I will appreciate the support. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, be kind to each other, be good to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace!